What's up, YouTube? This is your girl, Megan. Welcome back to the Hood Astro Queen, to all of my returning subscribers. However, if this is your first time joining me on today, be sure to hit that subscribe button because you know you want to. Also, if you are interested in booking your very own natal chart reading, all of my information is in the description box. So, yeah, we can go ahead and get you squared away on today. So, with that being said, today I'm coming to you guys once more with yet another birth chart reading, this time on Miss Destiny Harrison. So for those of you all who are unfamiliar with the name, she is the 21-year-old young woman who was tragically murdered in her own beauty salon back in December. I believe it was December 21st. And it was such a huge deal because, you had this very young woman who was a successful business owner. She grinded. She pretty much, everything that she had, she worked for it. She earned it. Her store was bought and paid for, and she was working in the store. And a few weeks prior to her death, she had actually reported that she was robbed by a male and a woman who basically broke into the shop, stole her bundles, and then assaulted her. And so fast forward those few weeks later, someone actually broke into her shop while she had customers there and while her daughter was in the store with her, and they shot her in the head and fled. And to this day, nobody is certain as far as the identity of the murderer. And it's just a big whodunit. It is upsetting a lot of people for obvious reasons. Nobody deserves to die like that. And it's just sad to see a young woman who had such a big future ahead of her, have her life taken from her in such a horrific manner. So I was able to get a hold of her birth date, and I thought it would be kind of interesting to go over some of the details of her birth chart. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So Miss Destiny Harrison was born on April 16th, 1998 in Baltimore, Maryland. Now, with her being a number 16 birth number, this deals with her life being a tragedy, as that number 16 does directly deal with tragedies. And for all my fellow 16s out there, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to die per se, but I've noticed a lot of 16s tend to have an up close and personal relationship with death. So be it your own death or you experiencing a lot of death around you, or just having a life that is very difficult, a lot more challenging than others, a lot more obstacles that you would have to overcome than others, and you being plagued with a lot of catastrophes. 16 deals with catastrophe. So that is a very challenging birth number to have off bat. But also, on the more positive side, as the number 16 does break down to 7, and the number 7 is ruled by Neptune, this absolutely coincides with her interest in hair and makeup. Another observation that I noticed was the fact that Destiny has an Aries stellium with her sun at the 25th degree, her Mercury at the 10th degree in retrograde, and then her Saturn at the 23rd degree. And this points towards her being a very passion-driven person. And even when you take a look at her accomplishments and the way her life turned out in those short years, she was only on the earth for 21 years, she was definitely someone who was able to harness a lot of that fire energy and really go for her dreams. That's very, very much that Aries energy. Aries is the initiator. They're cardinal fire, so they're really good at creating and directing and initiating new ways of being. This also makes them great leaders. And like I said, very passion driven because it's fire. Aries is fire. And these people do really well with kind of just taking that first leap and plunging into new ideas, new projects, new creative endeavors. And a lot of times, of course, depending on the other placements in the chart and how their Aries planets are aspected, it pays off for the most part. And I would definitely say in Destiny's case, a lot of her more risk-taking kind of qualities, they did pay off for her big time. This is reinforced with her sun being conjoined, making a very tight conjunction to that Saturn. And that deals with her being a very, like, taking her passions and making a business out of it, as Saturn does directly deal with businesses as well. Her even taking the initiative and being just an all around, like, businesswoman, a mogul, somebody who was really able to earn a reputation and maybe even respect of her elders within that particular industry, and really hop on that elevator and ride it all the way to success. That's very much Sun conjoined to Saturn. She could have been very hard on herself, particularly, but just someone who is just very determined. You can even look at that conjunction between her Sun and Saturn as like her being super ambitious, super focused, super disciplined and determined. Now, on the negative side, as stated before, this can often manifest in a person who is rather hard on themselves. They could experience certain periods of like depression, but with her Sun and Saturn in Aries, it's likely that she wouldn't, even if she was down in spirits, she probably wouldn't have been down in spirits for very long. Now, something else that I noticed that was very interesting about this conjunction was the fact that, according to reports, she was actually shot in the head during the time of her death. And that Sun conjoined to Saturn in Aries can quite literally translate into head injuries, brain injuries. And Aries, in and of itself, deals with weaponry and firearms. Like, quite literally, this could translate into her experiencing a gunshot wound to the head. Saturn in Aries, depending on the way that it's aspected, just in general, oftentimes comes with some type of head trauma, brain trauma. So yeah, there's that. Her Sun is also conjoined to her Mars, which is at the 2nd degree of Taurus, which points towards destiny being a financially driven or a very financially motivated individual. And shout out to Paris Milan. I was watching her documentary on Destiny. She has some of the best documentaries. Her and Impressive have amazing documentaries. But I was watching the one that she did on Destiny Harrison, where she was talking about how, like, since she was a teenager, like a young child, Destiny would find all of these different ways to make money. And of course, hair and makeup was one of them, but she also worked at Victoria's Secret, and she would pretty much be the type to always have a job. And that's very much encapsulated with the Sun conjoined to Mars. Now, women with their Mars in Taurus, just in general, tend to be very, like I said, financially motivated. So I can even look at this conjunction as her kind of scheming up or always thinking up ways to, like, okay, how can this secure me financially, but also even just be the type of person that seeks security and stability in all avenues of her life. And she could even be the type of, or could have even been the type of person to seek these things from the men that she deals with. Women with their Mars in Taurus are typically really good when it comes to, like, dating men of means. For the most part, if there aren't anything afflicting, or if there isn't anything afflicting that Martian energy, they don't date broke niggas. So this could be, her even getting money from men, or being showered with gifts from men. I don't know what her boyfriend or her child's father did in particular, but I could definitely see that being a thing. Her being the type of person to really enjoy luxury at that. She likes having the finer things. You could also look at that conjunction between her Sun and Mars as her being a businesswoman as well, like that reinforcing her being very affluent in business and business management. It also made her the type of person who was capable of going about things in a lot of her passions in a very pragmatic and practical way. Now, with her Mars squaring her Neptune, which is at the 2nd degree of Aquarius, this kind of conflicts that energy a little bit, or afflicts it a little bit, in the sense that this aspect can point to where she was particularly easily influenced by peers. Okay, and this is actually a reoccurring theme that I see in her chart. And it could also, like, point to where if she wasn't careful, there could have been a tendency for money to like slip through her fingers, or for even like her business to be sabotaged by acquaintances and people in her community, which I mean, it's very ironic given, the chain of events that took place leading up to, and even, just the nature of her death. And now that I'm thinking about it, it actually kind of undercut some of the potency of her Mars being in Taurus, to the point where I feel like she could have been exploited by men as well, like financially. I don't know if, once again, I don't know the nature of her personal relationship with her child's father or the men in her life, as far as like the men she dated. But yeah, that Mars in Taurus squaring her Neptune at the second degree of Aquarius can absolutely deal with her dealing with the guy who's like a leech, for lack of a better word. Like I said, it definitely does spell out victimization and sabotage by friends. Also, I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised if she dated like petty criminals, drug dealers, maybe men who even stole from her, or like I said, that could even just reinforce her being surrounded by like corrupt acquaintances and people who maybe she viewed as friends or something like that, maybe who would have been willing to steal from her. Same thing with her Sun square Neptune. Okay, typically women, a lot of the women that I see with Sun square Neptune are prime candidates for like men who have some type of like rehabilitation issues with society. Like, for example, I have a ton of clients with, or female clients with Sun square Neptune, and they've experienced dating men who've been incarcerated, men who are addicts, men who are thieves, men who are drug dealers, that kind of thing, right? Men who've been institutionalized in some type of way. They have a difficult time escaping the stronghold of victimization in their relationships with men, and it could have started with the father. But with her Neptune being in Aquarius, it just reinforces this theme of like victimization by, yes, men, but also victimization by friendships. I wouldn't even be surprised if she's encountered situations to where like some of her friends end up hooking up with her, a guy that she likes or a guy that she called herself with. This could even point towards a lot of conflict and infighting amongst friends. I mean, having her Sun and Mars squaring this Neptune in Aquarius could even point towards her being scapegoated amongst friends, her being gossiped about, her being lied on, stolen from. Like, so like not just with men, but just with all areas of her life, like all of her acquaintances and associations. If I were her, and if I could actually travel back in time to speak to her, I would strongly encourage her to kind of really be mindful of the people who she confides in and who she really calls herself trusting as a friend. And with Aquarius also dealing with the internet, that Sun Mars squaring her Neptune in Aquarius could absolutely deal with where she kind of shoots herself in the foot by posting like a lot of her business on social media. Now, I know from a professional standpoint, I mean, I use social media to advertise and market my business and so on and so forth. But especially with that Mars and Taurus squaring Neptune, maybe she posted like a lot of the things that she received, like, oh, if she went and bought a car, she would post a car, or, if she went and bought a house, she would post the house. Like, overexposing yourself like in a personal way on social media could have also been to her detriment, and with her being a Pisces South Node and her Venus conjoined to her South Node, she has like this energetic like karmic tie to being victimized, quite frankly, and a lot of these aspects in her chart really echo that. There was this tendency for her to associate herself with people who, like, the relationship was like unbalanced. She was very compassionate. This setup can make her somebody who was very much like even gullible. I would even say gullible because her Jupiter is conjoined to her South Node. Her Jupiter is at the 16th degree of Pisces as well. So once again, that number 16 dealing with catastrophe. And it also encapsulates this idea of like a lack of discernment, right? So having like this super compassionate, giving nature to the point where it can come back and bite you in the ass, and you're associating with people who are quite literally moochers and people who steal from you, who like I said, victimize you, who can plot against you in a lot of ways. And with her having that Virgo North Node, she had a karmic responsibility to be a lot more discerning in her affairs and to pay a lot more attention to the things that were happening around her, which could have been extraordinarily difficult given that she was also a Sagittarius moon. Now, depending on, exactly what degree the moon for her is placed in, it could have potentially made her moon square her nodes as well as her Venus. So that moon squared Venus in Pisces could point towards her, because a lot of Sagittarius moons have this thing to where they could have either grown up in like a very like multicultural environment, or they could have been people who traveled a lot, or are kind of even predisposed to want to travel and kind of set their sights on the bigger things as they move throughout life. But with her moon squaring that Venus in Pisces, especially moon squaring her Pisces South Node, could point towards her actually staying local and not really moving from the hood, or how because I've heard a lot of people put it like that, like, oh, well, this is what happens when you stay in the hood. And a lot of people encourage business owners and up and coming successful individuals to kind of move away from the toxic environment that they grew up in. But with her Sagittarius moon squaring that Pisces South Node and Venus, and even her Jupiter, could point towards where she stayed local due to a need to give back, to where her charitable nature trumped her desire to see the world. It could also even point towards her cutting college, or because I don't think she finished college, but that could also manifest in her not finishing college due to her cosmetology career. You could even look at that as her doing hair from her own dorm room, which is something that Paris Milan mentioned that she did. It could also point towards hair taking up a majority of her focus. So maybe she couldn't even focus on school like that. I even look at this as her gambling on partners and friends who aren't worth it. And with her being a Sagittarius moon, it does reinforce this theme with Sagittarius being governed by Jupiter. Then you have Pisces co-ruled by Jupiter. So it reinforces her South Node in the sense that it made her a very idealistic person and even gullible to a certain point. Like I said, reinforcing this theme of her being gullible or kind of naive and having very high hopes, high expectations for other people that more often than not, they weren't able to meet. That's that moon, her Sagittarius moon squaring her Venus. Her seeing the best in people and then not working out. It coming back to bite her in the ass. And once again, this could have taken place in her romantic friendships, her romantic relationships. But I also do feel like there was a strong component of this in her friendships. I feel like the people who actually killed her, I feel like she knew them. Okay, or the people who, like her current friends, knew the people. You see what I'm saying? Like, I feel like it's somewhere like within that, with like this wasn't just like a random occurrence by random people, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because you could kind of see this throughout her chart, Now, on a more positive note, her Venus conjoined to her Jupiter in Pisces definitely made her creative, extremely creative, and once again reinforces her interest in cosmetology and the beauty industry. I remember looking at a lot of her pictures, and she was always beautified, makeup to the gods. It's very much Venus could join Jupiter in Pisces, this big extravagant look. Like she looked like a Bratz doll, kind of. She was gorgeous because it's all about cosplay, or it's all about like making yourself up, fantasy, achieving like this fantasy type of illusion with your makeup. So she definitely encompassed a lot of that. That conjunction between her Venus and Jupiter in Pisces also pointed towards her dressing up and having expensive taste, and her personal style reflecting her artistic expression. So her experimenting with different hairstyles and experimenting with makeup and wearing different clothes that reflected how she was feeling, and or maybe just the headspace she was in creatively. Now, her Venus is actually squaring her Pluto. Okay. And that absolutely deals with her being killed at the hand of, associates. Okay. People that she interacted with on a day-to-day basis, or at least somebody within that social circle. So, that's something to think about too. Also, it could have even pointed towards her being kind of heavy-handed with her spending. Her Uranus is at the 12th degree of Aquarius, and it's squaring her Chiron, which is at the 17th degree of Scorpio, reinforcing this theme, this energy signature of her having nefarious associates, dealing with people with ulterior motives, dealing with a lot of jealousy and envy coming from other people. Like I said, particularly friends, acquaintances, people. I mean, this could have been people within, the same industry as her, or, anything. I feel like, once again, she knows. She either knew the person who actually killed her, or her friends know these people. It's not at random type of situation going on here. Also, that number 12, with her Uranus being at the 12th degree, that number 12 deals with victimization and sacrifice. It could also deal with accidents, like sudden accidents. So I would even look at that Uranus squaring her Chiron in Scorpio as there being, as her death, like a sudden death. It wasn't an accident, but, that Uranus energy is very sudden. It's very like unexpected. It's like even like destined in a way, like, preordained. It's something that can't really be controlled or modified. It just happens, like these sudden happenings, her dying instantly. Also, I noticed that her Neptune was conjoined to the fixed star Guide, which pointed towards her being very psychic in nature. It could have made her not easily understood by other people. It could also point towards cruelty from a parent. But it also reinforces this theme of her being greatly influenced by others. And then her Neptune is also conjoined to the fixed star Altair, which definitely creates secret enemies. Okay. It could also point towards a sudden and unexpected death. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So yeah. Also, I meant to mention that Venus conjoined to Jupiter, especially in Pisces, she probably gave a lot of money to people. She probably did a lot for people. I can't reinforce enough how, like I said, just compassionate she was. And a lot of people, I know, when people pass, a lot of people tend to say that, but I definitely see that in her chart for sure. Her Venus and Jupiter were also trining her Chiron in Scorpio, which definitely made her very like influential. It also pointed towards her rise in prominence within the hair field, or the hair and beauty industry. Her Neptune and Uranus could have also possibly trined her midheaven. Once again, I'm not exactly sure on her time of birth, but I mean, that aspect in and of itself makes sense, because it does point towards her having a successful online hair business as well, or her having or being able to utilize social media in her businesses. Her Mercury is trining her Pluto, which definitely deals with her being a strong sense of support for her family, or siblings in particular, or they could have been a very strong sense of support for her. I also meant to mention, with her Sun conjoined to Mars, this could have created a situation to where it's like she wanted to stack as much money as possible. you know, and it could even have created an effect to where she spoiled her daughter, or I mean, her daughter was only like is only two, I think. But she could have definitely been that type of parent, you know, to be like, look, my child is my motivation, you know, creating security for my child is my motivation, and I'm going to spoil my child. I'm going to give them everything that I've always wanted. She could have absolutely been that type of mother. So yeah, I know I'm kind of all over. I'm jumping all over the place now, but you know, just all in all, this was the story was unfortunate, and I'm gonna do a lunar nodal placement series very soon and kind of discuss some of the manifestations of each lunar nodal placement. But she definitely encompasses a lot of this Pisces South Node energy, and it's just unfortunate that she succumbed to it when it was all said and done. So, you know, with that being said, I want to encourage everybody to be mindful of the people who are around you. Pay attention and make decisions for yourself, you know? I mean, not all the time, but, you know, there's always a fine line. So, yeah, that concludes my video because I'm just rambling at this point. Y'all drop down in the comment section. Let me know what you thought of this particular story. Did it touch you? How do you feel? And yeah, make sure you practice unconditional self-love so that you can love others. And until the next time, I holla.